and filled the water bucket every day so there would be fresh water. Now, it wasn't all reading, writing, and arithmetic, as the saying goes. The teacher had to fill many positions. In a way, she was a psychiatrist, a psychologist. She took care of the physical exercise, which was done in the classroom on rainy days and outdoors in the nice weather. She also had to help the children with music. This is an old pump organ, and Mrs. Lanfair played the music on this when she was teaching music lessons to the children, and it was used also at holiday times, particularly for the Christmas program. Here we have a row of hooks, and as you can see, the children would hang their hats, their scarves, their small items along on these hooks. There are other hooks out in the entryway. Here we have an early lunch pail. The children would all bring their lunch to school, and on a nice day they would eat outdoors. Rainy days they would eat in here at their desk. Their mother would pack a sandwich or cookies and fruit, and they would all enjoy lunch here at the school. Over here we have a wonderful old stove. This was the total heat for this building. And it's interesting the way that the stove was fed. Each family who had a child or children in school would be responsible for a particular period of time. For example, it might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, or a month, but they knew how long their responsibility would last. And they would go into their woodlots and cut logs for the fire, and in winter use a sleigh, and in the spring use a wagon, bring the wood over and pile it outside the school. And each time that the stove had to be fed, one of the older boys would get up and get the wood and see that it was kept warm in the schoolhouse, so that it was always nice and cozy in the school. Well, this has been an enjoyable visit. I hear the children coming, so I'm going to go along, but I hope we can come back again. This is the 1798 Quaker Meeting House. It served the Quakers for nearly 100 years until the 1880s. And after that, it had a variety of uses, and we'll talk about that when we're inside. Please come in. Now that we are here in the old 1798 Quaker Meeting House, someone might ask, why did you want to save this old building? And the answer is that it is a very vital link to our North Castle heritage. It is true that the earliest part, the earliest settlement of the town of North Castle took place in the Eastern District, over where Middle Patent, East Middle Patent, and today the hamlet of Banksville stand. But it was the Quakers who settled here in Armonk after coming across Long Island Sound into Westchester. And so this central part of North Castle was really a Quaker establishment. This building and the Quaker cemetery around the corner attest to that. The Quakers traveled from this area to purchase and then later to Chappaqua, to have their services at their local meeting houses. But they wanted a place of their own here in North Castle. The conditions were very difficult for travel. In the wintertime, there were ice and snow all over the roads. In the spring, it would be ruts and mud. And so in the 1790s, they petitioned to have their own meeting house. And in 1798, it became a reality. They were a people who didn't like fancy things. Their lifestyle was plain, and I think part of the design of this building attests to that. You will notice the door that we just came in is on the right-hand side of the building, and there is a matching door on the left-hand half of the building. This allowed for the women to come in one side and the men the other side. They would have their individual meetings, the men in one group, the women in the other group, before they had their worship service. And here we have an example of how this building was divided. This is an original partition, and as you can see, it is quite easy to raise it up, blocking off the other section of the building. Then when the worship service started, that would be lowered. Moving over here, I'd like to point out some of the restoration that took place in this building. In 200 years, the upright beams had suffered from the exposure of the weather. And you can see that this new wood is put in and very carefully fashioned in so that these wonderful old chestnut posts could still be used as they were 200 years ago. And now I'd like to share with you some information about the balcony. Looking up at the balcony, you can see that it runs the entire length of this building, which is 40 feet long. There are two sets of stairs, one on the east of the building and one on the west, both leading up to the balcony. There would have been bleachers up there for the younger people to sit on during service. Building, you can see that there is a long platform here with a step leading up to it. And on the platform, we have these wonderful old benches. A gentleman was traveling up in New Hampshire and Vermont and saw these and knew they would be suitable for the Quaker Meeting House and brought them down to us as a gift. We're very pleased to have them. The elders would have sat up here during services as the young people were up in the balcony and others were on the main floor. The elders then could observe everything that was transpiring during the meeting. And now I'd like to show you some more of the restoration. We're here on the western side of the building. The eastern side of that room divider would have been used by the women, and the men would have been on this side. There would have been benches along this main floor for the adults to be seated. Over here we have one of the original windows. We're very fortunate that most of the original windows were saved. You can see these lovely early panes of glass. Much of this had to be painstakingly refinished by volunteers, but we were able to save all of the original windows. Underneath the 4 front windows, there are plaques, one for each of the 4 people who were so instrumental in the saving and restoration of this early building. It's interesting to think about the history of this building, which, as you know, was built in 1798. It served as a meeting house, a place of worship for the Friends until about the 1880s, when the Friends ceased to use it as a meeting place. Eventually, it was turned into a stable. There were 3 small windows along the opposite side where the stalls were located. The back part of the building was completely opened up so that not only tractors but trucks could be stored here. Hay was stored in the building. Eventually, it ceased to be used and it became just vacant and began to wear down. The roof leaked and it was really quite in a very bad state. But we tried to preserve every possible item that we could of the original building. You will notice this fine old stairway with the railing so smooth from years of wear. The steps are very, very steep, but that's indicative that the younger people would have been climbing them. And it's really, you can feel the wonderful smoothness of the old wood. Over here would have been the extension of the platform, but because we wanted to use a lower level to have a kitchen and facilities and an archival room, we needed to have an entrance from this floor. So it was foreshortened and the stairway was put in here. So I invite you to come with me downstairs and I'd like to show you what we've done on the lower level. Here we are at the lower level of the Quaker Meeting House. And we had planned for a kitchen area here so that we could serve food down here. There are 2 restrooms which are wheelchair accessible. And down in the corner we have a large room that is fireproof, climate controlled, and we call it our archival room. As we are about to leave, I'd like to point out that beyond this door, we have a nice lawn area surrounded by woodlands. As we reach the end of our tour of these 4 historic buildings, I hope you've had a good time with us, and I hope that you'll come back and visit this historic site again. Thank you.